Lovely. Hello, everybody. Are we having a good AWE so far? I am. I think it's marvelous. I'm busy shilling for Qualcomm and Lenovo while I'm here. So if you get a chance to check out Snapdragon Spaces and the kind of Lenovo offering, it kind of features quite heavily in the presentation. But I've seen every presenter so far come up on stage with some AR glasses on, so I felt left out not doing it myself. So I've got a wonderfully generic topic title called Building the Virtual Metaverse, but hopefully the more I explain about the topic, it'll start to make more sense. So I'm the co-founder of a technology business called Visor. We're a decade old at this point. We've been building Metaverse products for 10 years, specifically Metaverse, not VR and XR. And I want to talk a little bit about how the Metaverse itself is this sort of emergent digital frontier, because there's a lot of capacity for us to get kind of drawn away in the hyper machine of the Metaverse brand and not very much, possibly understand what its implications are and why it is actually as exciting as it is. So internally, we kind of define the Metaverse as an emerging digital frontier. And from my point of view, we've been working on this for quite a long time, and I get really excited about it because it's actually working on something that is an emergent digital frontier is a very profound experience. Just as a question, what was the last emergent digital frontier that happened to humanity, and what did it change? Does anyone want to kind of shout it out? Someone said internet. Yeah. So yeah, the last emergent digital frontier that happened was the internet. And the question to what did it change is, well, it changed everything. But some of the more important key fields that were impacted by the emergence of web technologies were commerce, how we buy things, how we sell things, science, how we discover things, social, how we talk to each other, how we interact as human beings, enterprise, how we do work and how work affects us, engineering, how do we build things, learning, how do we create new repositories of knowledge and share that between people, AI, where's this repository of human stuff that we're going to teach these computers that we're teaching to think? Well, it comes from the internet. And the obvious one being communications, how do we talk to each other, how do we get machines and data systems to interact in a way that's meaningful? And the quote at the bottom is actually from a guy called Tim Berners-Lee, who's the founder of the web. And he said something which was quite profound, which was that data is the precious thing, and it will last longer than the systems themselves. And that's the first kind of tipping point concept I want to start to talk about. So it's the data that proliferates on the internet that is the value of the internet as a system. It is not, it is not the technology itself. It is not the access devices. It is not how you use it. It is what you do with it. And the reason that the internet is such a prolifically valuable source of data is because the initial design and the initial formulation of the architecture of the internet was very carefully thought out, built for the right reasons, propagated for the right reasons, and is vigorously maintained by fleets of very talented engineers and the big corporates that support them as an open and understood data standard. So the internet itself is a concept. The internet only works because everybody agrees that all the servers and services are going to work together to produce the output that we expect when we go to a URL and we find a web page and we do some stuff. And these wonderfully sort of beige diagrams from the 90s that explain the topology of the internet and the topology of connected systems that created the web. Those layouts haven't really changed. We've invented cloud computing. We've done more distributed compute to scale the internet to its maximum potential. But you have a terminal, it accesses a network. The network is full of sources of information designated by URLs. You go to a set location, and that location is full of content that is relevant to a particular topic that you're searching for. We haven't changed that in 30, 40 years. And so let's look at a typical web experience, because actually understanding how we get value out of the internet is key to understanding how we're going to start getting value out of the metaverse. And there are several pillars of a web experience that make a web experience valuable to you as a user that we're going to then look at mapping onto using the metaverse. So the first thing that's really important about the web is that you have this concept of locatable content. So locatable content is I go to a place. I go to a specific place that has a specific spatial designation on the web. We call it URL. But you go to a particular place called LinkedIn.com, you expect to find a virtual environment, and in that virtual environment is LinkedIn.com. You don't go to LinkedIn.com and expect to find some other place. LinkedIn.com is a place that you go. And at LinkedIn.com, you find various types of things. So you find representative rich media. So LinkedIn.com is a repository of business information, and that information contains rich media and multimedia. So photos, videos, dates, calendars, data about users, data about events, data about businesses. So rich content. The third most important kind of pillar of this is that the web is built on this concept called stream data. So the web would be useless if you had to download the entire internet onto your phone in order to use it. You couldn't provide that as a user-driven experience, right? So you have to be able to recover and restore data from remote repositories of knowledge far bigger than your access terminal in order to get value out of the internet. You also have, locations filled with user-generated content. So most of the content, if you look at kind of where the value of big tech businesses comes from these days, most of the content that fills the web is user-generated. You don't go to LinkedIn.com to look at a pre-programmed registry of business information that some web developer has made. You go there to find posts from your colleagues in your field and discover content created by users. And that in itself is backed by a strong sense of identity. So on the web, you are a person. You are an individual. And actually, depending on how much identity you want to opt into, and the important point there is that you must opt into it, you can represent yourself very precisely on the internet with a digital passport of types. And there are many open standards that support strong identity. So when you want to use the web and when you want to get value out of the web, you go to a place, you consume rich media that's usually streamed to your device, you have a wide gamut of user-generated content available to you, and you're able to access that content with a strong sense of self. And that can be used for authentication and all sorts of other things. And those concepts themselves become the founding pillars of the metaverse that we're going to be building. Because computers are changing. And usually, I have this kind of interesting idea that you can tell when you're on the kind of tipping point of a paradigm shift in computing when processing architectures and computer architectures start to change. The web came about as computers became more connected. These days, if you don't buy a smartphone that has an in-silicon network adapter, it doesn't work. So, we're starting to see this paradigm shift of in-silicon changes towards AI and thinking machines, and silicon that can provide more than kind of the basic rules of Moore's law. They are thinking, AI-driven processors that are allowing computers to change the way that they interface with the world and how we interface with them. They think a lot more than they used to. And they're able to reason about the world that we live in. And that means you can do something quite interesting, is that for the first time, instead of locking your connected web experience behind a screen, you're able to invite a computer into your world and have it form a holistic understanding of the world that you live in, or join it in its. So we have this kind of two-way communication now where we can roam into the realm of the machine, and the realm of the machine can roam into our world and add value. And so we start to form this kind of vision of the metaverse that's more than a marketing tagline, right? So the metaverse is a participant content experience. What I mean by that is users create content inside the metaverse that doesn't happen on web pages. It happens in the worlds that we inhabit, driven by this new silicon and these new machines that understand so much more about the world than we live in than they used to. And we're going to populate our real-world places and our virtual places with content, knowledge, experiences, and emotions in the same way that we have the web. And that's where the value and the profound change and the step change in how we interact with computers that the metaverse is going to drive is going to happen. We need to have an open enough and powerful enough metaverse that we can propagate this future. But we're technologists, right? So how, as technologists who have to build technology strategies, do we start to think about the building blocks of such a vision? Because the internet wasn't built overnight, and the metaverse won't be either. This is going to be a long process that we're all going to participate in. But I kind of want to call back to one of the previous points that I made, that the web is maintained by thousands of engineers with a commitment to open standards who are deeply passionate about the openness of the web and how that forms its value. It's not a single point of control. There's not one big corporate that owns the web. The web is globally available as a resource. And the metaverse should be too. So we do this internally. We'll have a big meeting. We'll say, okay, well, we've got this statement. We're going to allow users to create these user-generated experiences and fill the world with them. What are we going to do? And we start to break it down into narratives. And we have this 6-point kind of roadmap that goes to the metaverse. And the metaverse is at the end of fulfilling all of these 6 points. And the sentence goes, gateways to the metaverse will allow participants to experience digital places, bringing things with them to compose new worlds which they will share with others. And you have to fulfill all 6 of those points to be providing a metaverse experience. If you're not, you're building a multiplayer game or you're pretending to build a metaverse. So, the things that I'm really passionate about are composing new worlds, participants with strong sense of identity, and sharing with others. And there are technological challenges to be solved for each one of them. So gateways to the metaverse are typically, we talk about access devices owned by iOS platform holders or OEMs. They pretty much have to be because their R&D of these devices is really expensive. Bringing like really good XR headsets to market costs a fortune. And you have to be a big tech company in order to make enough of a ripple in the market to produce enough devices to make it worth it. The second one along is, allows participants to represent themselves digitally. How are we going to represent avatars in a standardized manner? There must be 100 companies here who have an avatar platform at this point. Can you interrupt those avatars between everybody else's metaverse platform? No, you can't. Each metaverse builder will have to interop with that platform, and then there's going to be another set of integration and another layer. At the moment, we don't have one self that can roam between many providers' metaverses. To experience digital places is deceptively complicated. Can you build some experience in spatial and then take it into Facebook's, metaverse experience? No, you can't. We don't have an open standard for representing digital worlds in the metaverse. We're not even really talking about it, and we should be, because it's going to be really important. Bringing things with them is easier. We're actually quite good at building content open standards. The web's done a lot for us in terms of understanding how we propagate images, how we propagate video, how we propagate music and sound. And we're lucky that a lot of the work that Kronos Group has done on GLTF and standards like USDZ help to further standardize the proliferation of 3D content. Because I've been building games before this for 20 years, and 3D content management is a nightmare. Because for many years, nobody really agreed on a standard. And if you want a preview of the power that agreeing on standards does, have a look at now the adoption of GLB and GLTF across the industry versus trying to share 3D models between different platforms even 5 or 6 years ago. It was really difficult. Again, composing new worlds. How are we going to build these environments? Are we going to build these environments again and again in everybody's different platform? And that sounds like I'm kind of being facetious. I'm a level designer. I don't want to build this world twice. But we work with some massive energy companies, and they do things like spend millions of dollars building training content in authoring packages for XR. And they're then locked into a single provider's platform, and they can't get out. And they can't. And the big problem with that is that not only can they not get out, what happens if that provider's device is no longer relevant or outcompeted by another device? They have to start that process again. And what it's actually doing is it's harming our industry's ability to proliferate, because big companies who spend lots of money on content for our industry are scared to do so because they don't want to be trapped within a walled garden. And big tech companies are doing no good to this problem either. This is something that we have to do together and collaboratively, and it has to be an open standard. The same, how will we share these contents with other people? Will we share them on specific servers owned by specific companies, or can a set of content and a set of experiences be packaged in such a way that I can create a multiplayer session in anybody's environment and invite people to join me? And the answer to this question doesn't really exist. We're missing huge pieces of standardization in the architecture of the metaverse as it goes. So, we're standardizing around OpenXR, good. Because we didn't, and that was a nightmare. How many people have had to build for like 4 or 5 different platforms and have if, def, hell, and compile chains that take 4.5 hours to execute across 3 different game engines, and your models don't look the same, and the customer's complaining. So we're starting to get there in terms of building client experiences, OpenXR, WebXR, that whole stack's brilliant. We're very good at building online authentication systems because we need that for more than just the metaverse. Our platform supports OpenID Connect, which means that you can use anybody's authentication provider to identify yourself in the metaverse. But then moving on to experience in digital places, we don't have a universal scene graph format for building interactive 3D worlds. We've got things like USDZ for 3D models, but when you want to, you can't put a Unity scene in Unreal. It doesn't work. But there's no reason from a data perspective that can't be a transferable standard. Again, GLTF, look, is all driven by the Kronos Group and making everything happen at this point. GLTF is great for transferring 3D models. Good, we've got that one sorted out. But we have no way of having universal level editors that work from one platform to the other. That bit's never happened. And we certainly don't have a way of building multiplayer session hosting servers that are ubiquitous and can work with anybody's platform. So a lot of our company's kind of vision and goal, we spend building open standards for the things with the question marks, but also building cloud platforms that show best case scenarios for implementing this kind of thing. And that was what the platform that we built is. So we call the platform Vertex, which is a nice set of fun words when you combine them. We came up with it because a vertex is an inflection point in a trend, but it also has kind of 3D connotations. So marketing people are like cool stuff like that. But the goal here is to build an open platform to build the infrastructure to support the metaverse or anybody's metaverse. Anybody should be able to take something like the toolkit we've written if they don't want to do the work, or the standards that we're trying to create if they do want to do the work, and either build their own infrastructure from scratch or scale up and build their own infrastructure products on top of another. Because software companies will build the fabric of the metaverse. The metaverse will live in the cloud. It will live in server clusters. It will be built on the infrastructure work that's been done by the big tech companies already, providing things like file storage, real-time networking, VoIP services, and authentication. But the actual standards and operating procedures for the metaverse are yet unwritten. And it needs to be an open conversation between us all as to how we want to represent this world. There we go. And so, we've had a good stab at this, and I'd invite anyone who, is interested to come and have a look at the stand. We're here supporting one of our partners, Headless Innovation, who have built their own metaverse on this stack and have had, tens of thousands of CCUs across millions of sessions. But, importantly, the platform operates across a whole host of different platforms. And, if you go back to the original vision, so we say people building gateway experiences for gateway devices to access the metaverse, who might be building in Unity, or they might be using TypeScript because they're building a web experience, or they might want to use another platform's kind of OpenSDK and build something from scratch. Well, they're going to allow their users to have a strong sense of presence. So we had a good stab at that. How are you going to have a metaverse passport based on OpenID Connect, where you can use any corporate authentication system or allow users to represent themselves anonymously in a guest session? Platform covers all of that. It's all an open standard. You can read it if you like. But how are we going to allow them to do identification? That bit's sorted. How are we going to allow them to kind of build, great experiences? How are they going to build places that you want to go that exist both in real life? So, that's our stand at AWE. You'll see it. It's by the play zone. It's on the back of the right when you go into the expo hall. That's a metaverse world that runs in our platform. We're accessing the metaverse via Lenovo devices running Snapdragon Spaces. If you want to see a really great kind of connected cloud Snapdragon Spaces demo where all of this stuff happens between tablets and XR devices that are devices to come along and visit us. All ones that exist in purely virtual locations. So the other half of the stand is a pavilion that belongs to an Italian business called Worth. They have a metaverse where they do sales and they operate commerce. It's built in this technology. It's been built by Headless Innovation, who's our kind of most trusted partner in Europe for this. And we have a really nice integrated demo of all this stuff happening on the stand. How will we allow people to bring things with them? So again, highlighting Headless here, this is an example application that they build called Holo Museum. This is a GLB file. This GLB file is streamed onto that guy's headset when he goes into the museum. That's how it works. And it scales up, so you can go into that museum with a phone or an AR headset, it doesn't matter. You can stream that from a central CMS to the device, and it's rendered in glorious PBR in a realistic manner. They can bring things with them. They can author content using that standardized 3D content library, so we allow them again, more featuring of Headless. This is a custom 3D world editor that they built that builds worlds in the open standard. So these worlds can be transferred between all their products with one editor. These worlds can be transferred between their products and a competitor's product if they like, meaning they can give their customers kind of peace of mind that they're not locked into a single platform. But they've been able to build this kind of ultra-powerful web-based editing experience where you can build these virtual environments, propagate the open standards, and work with metaverse authoring. And then share those with others. And the sharing with others, as I said before, come to our stand and have a chat with us about this. We'd love to share this particular view of the metaverse with you. We'd like you to experience it in XR. We'd like you to experience it on the web and have conversations about, maybe you're building experiences. Maybe you're an infrastructure company. Maybe you're a headset business who's looking for great content. All those things, this particular vision is going to be relevant for you as you go ahead and build. So from our point of view, I just wanted to give you some food for thought around the route taken over the next 12 months that will form the foundation of where our industry goes. Is about data, is about connectivity, is about the future of how devices are connected together, and what we do with the precious data that we create. The data of our emotions, our thoughts, and our experiences that propagates and fills this metaverse is precious. And we have to look after it, and we have to be careful about how we don't create pinnacles of control within an industry that's only just getting started. We have to galvanize around open standards. We have to support organizations who are serious about open standards. We have to think about the kind of connected vision of the future, because I don't think the connected vision of the future of the metaverse is one big tech company's platform. It's going to work like the web, and the web works when we work together. And I look forward to meeting some of you on the stand. Hopefully come have a chat with me. If you're planning to build a scaled out metaverse like this by yourself, perhaps the product that we're building can be a launch pad for that for you. If you're building enterprise experiences and you need security or you need to use a more established platform, if you just want to build something is going to have a future-proof technology vision and you want to have a springboard to start from, there's a conversation to be had with us about all of those points. And so I look forward to seeing you all. I thank you for the 30 minutes today. I appreciate that everybody's very busy, so I know that selecting a talk out of that is an honor for me. It's my first talk in California. I came to GDC 20 years ago and thought, oh, I'll do a talk at a place in California, so hopefully you haven't thought it's terrible. But it's a life ambition for me to stand on stage in California and do a tech talk, so that's great. And I've left 5 minutes at the end for any questions, and really I hope that we can have some further conversations about the metaverse and what you guys are all building and how exciting it is and the future that's going to come to our industry in the next 12 months, because the next 12 months are where it's all going to happen. And thanks for spending 30 minutes of this 12 months with me. I think the next slide's black, which is a faux pas on my part. Yeah, okay. It's the end of the show, look. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, where do you see the biggest opportunities, either by industry or in the technology arena?
So for me, this kind of interesting thing is about this definition of participant experiences. It's actually like a cloud services integration opportunity. So virtual places where devices and people can meet and exchange data in a standardized format is incredibly powerful. And if you're in, one of the things that we've done over the last few years is we built the world's largest tracking volume. So we built kind of an AI anchoring algorithm. We worked in partnership with Microsoft to do this, and we made a centimeter resolution tracking volume that was like several miles in every direction, and there's a whole energy facility in there. And people who walk around that facility can access data at the snip of their fingers. And that has saved them hours and hours and hours and hours of engineering time, and it propagates knowledge. And the propagates knowledge part is the most important part. So if you operate a complex organization and you have members of staff who are we call them pinnacles of responsibility, people who know everything about the plant, and your organization's response to, how do we do this shut-off procedure is, oh, well, Steve knows how. You're at risk there, actually, of losing knowledge when Steve retires and your information about how you operate and move around your environment isn't stored anywhere. If you teach the machine how you work as an organization and invite the machine to work with you, you get more value out of the time of your staff, and that's valuable to them. And so for us, it's about this, increased human efficiency, increased HCI, working with computers augmenting the abilities of people to work within corporate environments and design environments and engineering environments and collaboration environments and social environments is where that kind of increase in value is going to come from, in my opinion, which might be wrong. Well, let's find out.
Hey, thanks for the talk. You mentioned the need for identifier, and you mentioned OpenID. Have you thought about the decentralized identifiers? I don't know if you're familiar with that. One of the issues or challenges of sort of interoperability between different worlds is how can I bring my experience from one world to the other, and that seems very hard to do with OpenID.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, OpenID is an interesting beast, so I wouldn't say that we'd ever want to move away from that as a standard for auth, but there's an opportunity for integration, things like forging digital contracts on blockchains to represent people that can then, that's an indelible source of, trusted information that you can use as a source of representation. The reason why we like things like OpenID is you can extend it. So that can be one of your sources of IDs. You can have a more open identification method that provides the ability to identify users in that manner. Or you can be really corporate about it and say, you're using Azure Active Directory or you're not coming in this metaverse. And actually, we believe a lot that those choices should come down to the particular metaverse owner. So if you're a business that has a metaverse that represents all your meeting rooms, you probably want to be quite strict. If you're an art gallery and you want people to be able to come and express themselves, your view of how user identification is going to work is going to be totally different. And we like OpenID. Is it perfect? No. Is any open standard for any of this perfect? No. Could GLB be improved? Yes, absolutely. Could OpenXR be improved? Yes, it can. But you can make those suggestions. And actually, if you think there's issues with OpenID as a source of ID in the metaverse, I'd love to know in more detail why, and maybe those can be worked around and talked about more. That's the whole point. We want to talk more about what we want from all these standards if we're going to create them or work towards creating them.
Hi, with that in mind, are you involved with or thinking of driving a consortium of people, organizations, entities that want to coordinate around open standards? Because it seems like a classic coordination problem.
It is, yes. I like that joke that says there's 25 standards for something, and someone says, oh, well, we should standardize all of this into one standard, and there are now 26 standards for everything. So, it's absolutely a problem of communication, and us all being locked in our bedrooms for the last 3 years has probably not helped with that. But hopefully, coming to events like this and starting to say, yeah, we should probably be having one conversation about what standards we're having. Organizations like Kronos Group are really good at that. Having recognized voices join that. If anything, I'm just trying to kind of nudge the conversation in the direction of there's 3 missing blocks there that nobody's talking about in terms of how the metaverse becomes standardized. We're here to join some of those organizations this week. We've had some invitations already to join some of them, but are completely open to this conversation being one that's held amongst member groups. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think I've had the nod, and my timer's gone to 0, and there's a flashing red light. I think I disappear down a hole in the ground if I don't get off the stage at this point. So thank you very much for your time. It's been really nice speaking to everyone. Again, we're in the stand at the end of the expo hall on the right, just in front of the play area. It says H-Verse, Headless Innovation on it. You'll see us wearing these all afternoon tomorrow. Please come and speak with us. Anybody who wants to speak with me after, please come and do, and have a great rest of the show. Thank you very much.